Hey folks, this is another video in a series that aspires to teach Google Apps Script's DriveApp to beginners. In previous lessons, we've learned how to access all the files on Google Drive, how to access files from folders and subfolders, as well as how to move files and to move them with conditions. We're going to resume by navigating to the Files module, where we will be creating a new script file. We're going to call this h_delete_files_conditionally. We're going to hit enter. We're going to change the name of our function so that it's called delete F files C condition. We're going to save our project and begin on line 2. We're going to hit enter once, 2 slashes on our keyboard, and we are going to access the folder with the files we want to delete. I'm going to hit enter and tab, and we're going to declare a variable called folder, which is going to be set to DriveApp.getFolderById, and we're going to have an open parentheses. GetFolderById takes a single argument, which needs to be structured as a string. So that means we're either going to have single quotes or double quotes. It doesn't matter which one you use. You just want to remain consistent with whatever you've been doing to this point in your project. So once you have your quotation marks in there, we're going to navigate back to Drive, where we are going to identify a folder where we want to delete all the contents of it. So I'm going to use this folder here. You can make one and then just add in some files in there. You know, I don't have anything super intensive. You can see that my untitled spreadsheet just has literally the word sheets in cell 1. You don't even need to do that. So just set up some type of folder with some files so that you can delete them. So we are going to collect the folder ID, which is found in the URL. So anytime you want to access an ID for a Google Drive folder or file type, whether it's a sheet, a document, whatever, it's going to be in the URL, and it's going to be an alphanumeric character like this. So you'll copy whatever you have there, and we're going to paste it into the getFolderById quotation marks. We hit the right arrow on our keyboard twice and add a semicolon. We're going to hit enter twice. We're going to hit the left arrow on our keyboard twice. We're going to add 2 slashes for a comment where we will access the files. We're going to hit enter and tab, and we're going to declare a variable of files. And we're going to set that equal to folder.getF files, and we'll have open parentheses. We're going to hit the right arrow on our keyboard, and we're going to add a semicolon. We're going to hit enter twice, 2 slashes for a comment, and now we're going to log out the files variable. So we're going to hit enter and tab. We're going to use logger.log, open parentheses, and then we're going to pass in that files variable from line 7. We're going to hit run so that we can see what we get. And if you've been following along with the series, you know that when you use get files or get folders, you get an iterator response. So you can see in my console log, I have the word file iterator. That means that in order to access the files, I'm going to have to loop through them, and I'm going to need to use a while loop. So because our ambitions are to delete multiple files, we are going to need to extract the file IDs in order to pass them into the methods that we want to use. So we are going to resume on line 10, and we're going to hit enter twice, and then we're going to hit the left arrow on our keyboard 4 times. We're going to add 2 slashes for a comment, and then we are going to create an empty array to collect the file arrays. We're going to hit enter and tab, and we're going to declare a variable of array, which is going to be set equal to empty square brackets. We're going to hit the right arrow on our keyboard, and we are going to add a semicolon. So what's going to happen is we are going to use the while loop to access each file from the files variable. We're going to extract some data that we need, like the name, the ID, and the file type, and then we're going to store it into a array. And then we're going to push that array into the array on line 13 so that we have an array of arrays, which is also known as a two-dimensional array. And once we have a two-dimensional array, we'll have the ability to loop through each array within the two-dimensional array. We can then leverage some of the data points, such as the file type, in order to set conditions to determine if the file should be deleted or not. So we're going to resume on line 13 by hitting enter twice and the left arrow on our keyboard twice. And we're going to add 2 slashes for a comment where we will loop using while to access each file. We're going to hit enter and tab, and we are going to use the while loop in order to loop through the files variable. So we're going to use files.has capital N next, and we're going to have empty parentheses where we are going to access each element of the file iterator. So we're going to hit the right arrow on our keyboard twice, we're going to hit space, and we are going to have open curly brackets. We're going to hit enter once, add 2 slashes for a comment, and now we are going to say store each file to the variable. We're going to hit enter and tab, and we're going to declare a variable of file, which is going to be set equal to files.next. We're going to have an open parentheses there. We're going to hit the right arrow on our keyboard, and we are going to add a semicolon. We're going to hit enter twice. We're going to add 2 slashes for a comment, and now we're going to log out the file variable. So we're going to hit enter and tab, and we are going to say logger.log open parentheses file. We're going to hit the right arrow on our keyboard. We're going to add a semicolon, and now we're going to have the opportunity to evaluate if we have successfully accessed each iteration of our files variable. So we're going to hit run. And the first output that you're seeing there, file iterator, is coming from our logger on line 10. So we have successfully accessed the files in the folder, and then we are seeing 2 additional line items, untitled spreadsheet and howdy. Those are coming from line 21. So each time the while loop loops through the files variable, we are accessing each element of that file's iterator in the file variable. And each time it runs, it outputs whatever's in files. So the first thing that comes is untitled spreadsheet, and the second thing is howdy. So those 2 are coming from the logging on line 21. So if you are successfully seeing all of the files that exist in your folder, then you will resume on line 21, where you will hit enter twice. You'll hit the left arrow on your keyboard 4 times, add 2 slashes for a comment, and now we're going to create an empty array to store the file data. I'm going to hit enter and tab, and we are going to declare a variable called array capital F file, and we're going to set that equal to square brackets. We're going to hit the right arrow on our keyboard, and we are going to use a semicolon. We're going to hit enter twice, and we're going to add 2 slashes for a comment, and we will now push the file data into the array file variable. I'm going to hit enter and tab. So we're going to reference array capital F file, and then we're going to use the .push method with an open parentheses. We're going to begin by passing in the file variable, which will result in the file name being pushed into the empty array. So when you use push, you add something to an array. It has to be an array when you use push. So when you push something into an empty array, the result will be square bracket, and then in this case, the file name. So we are going to hit the right arrow on our keyboard. We're going to hit space. We're going to add 2 slashes for a comment, and we're just going to denote that this line is where we are populating the name. We're going to hit enter, and then we are going to reference array file again. We're going to use the push method again, and this time we're going to use file.getCapital ID. We're going to have an open parentheses there. We are not passing any arguments to this function. We're going to hit the right arrow on our keyboard twice, hit space, add 2 slashes for a comment, and denote that this is where the ID is coming from. We're going to hit enter, and we are going to push one more value into the array file. So we're going to do array file.push, open parentheses, file.get, capital M, MIME type, open parentheses. Again, we are not passing any arguments in here, so we can hit the right arrow on our keyboard twice and hit space. We're going to add 2 slashes for a comment, and this is where we're going to denote the file type. So if it's a spreadsheet, it'll say spreadsheet. If it's a document, it'll say document, so on and so forth. So what we're going to do now is hit enter twice, 2 slashes for a comment, and we're going to log out the array file. So we're going to hit enter and tab, and we're going to do logger.log, open parentheses, array, capital F file. We're going to hit the right arrow on our keyboard. We're going to add a semicolon, and now we're going to evaluate if we have successfully pushed the data that we want into the array file. So we're going to hit run. The first thing we're going to see is that file iterator, which is where we're getting the files from. The next thing that we're seeing is untitled spreadsheet. That is the first file coming from the file iterator. After that, you're seeing square brackets where we have untitled spreadsheet, an alphanumeric character, and then a string of words that say spreadsheet at the very end. So MIME type comes back in a computer readable format, more so than a human readable format, but you can still parse out that it says spreadsheet at the end. The next thing we're seeing is howdy, and then the same thing. So we successfully created arrays. So that's the first step that we needed to do. We needed to create individual arrays for each file, and now we are going to look to push those arrays into our empty array on line 13. But before we move forward, I'm going to create a new file type because I want something besides spreadsheets in there, because we're eventually going to be using the file type portion of our arrays in order to set a condition for files that need to be deleted. So I'm going to go back to my folder now, and I'm just going to create another file type. So I'm going to open a document, and I'm just going to either change the name or enter something in the body so that it starts appearing in my drive. So you can see that I'm just typing nonsense in there. It doesn't matter. I'm waiting for it to finish saving. And now that it's been saved to Drive, I'm going to close it out. And when I go back to my folder, you can see I now have 2 spreadsheets and 1 document. So I'm going to go back to my app. I'm going to run it. And now you can see that I have an untitled document in here. So now we just have a little bit of diversity so that you can see that there is a document type and 2 spreadsheet types. Great. So we are going to resume on line 32. We're going to hit enter 2 times, and then we're going to hit the left arrow on our keyboard 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times, and add 2 slashes for a comment. We are going to push the array file to the array on line 13. We're going to hit enter and tab, and we are going to say array dot push open parentheses array file. We're going to hit the right arrow on our keyboard. We're going to add a semicolon. We're going to hit the down arrow on our keyboard once, hit enter twice, and the left arrow on our keyboard twice. We're going to add 2 slashes for a comment, and now we're going to log out the array on line 13. We're going to hit enter and tab. We're going to do logger.log open parentheses array. We're going to hit the right arrow on our keyboard. We're going to add a semicolon, and we're going to run our file. So we're looking at the last line down here, and you can see that we have 2 square brackets at the beginning and 2 square brackets at the end. This is a good early indication that we have successfully created a 2-dimensional array. And then we are seeing single arrays that are comma separated. So you can see that the third output in my execution log is something called untitled document, which is the first array that we are seeing in our 2-dimensional array. The next array has the first element of untitled spreadsheet. You can see that is the second output in here. And the third array is howdy, which is the final output in here. So we have successfully built a 2-dimensional array, which is built out of an array or arrays of our files. So we have a two-dimensional array of all of our files, which means that we have the ability to continue transforming this data. We also have the ability to send it to Google Sheets if we wanted to visualize this data. But for the purposes of our lesson, we are now going to be moving to the final phase where we will be looping through our two-dimensional array and then establishing conditions to delete files. So I am going to close some of my shelves because we don't need them anymore. So on line 6, I am going to close out the access the files section of my code, and I am also going to collapse line 15, which is my while loop, because we don't need it anymore. So now we have a nice clean environment to work in, and we are going to resume on line 39. We're going to hit enter twice, hit the left arrow on your keyboard twice, and add 2 slashes for a comment. So we are going to loop through the array on line 13. So we're going to hit enter and tab, and we're going to be using a for loop. So we're going to type for open parentheses I in array. We're going to hit the right arrow on our keyboard, hit space, add curly brackets, hit enter once, and add 2 slashes for a comment. So we are going to evaluate the file type. We're going to hit enter and tab, and we're going to say if open parentheses array square bracket I, and then we're going to hit the right arrow and we're going to do square bracket 2. We're going to hit the right arrow again, and we are going to say dot includes open parentheses, and now we're going to use single quotes because we are going to use a string to identify what we want to have as our condition for this if statement. So when I'm saying if array square bracket I square bracket 2 includes, I am evaluating the third element of each array within our two-dimensional array. So I'm going to open up my execution log so that we can look into this a little bit further. We're going to begin with the last line of output where we have a two-dimensional array. So within our two-dimensional array, we have one-dimensional arrays. So the first dimension of a two-dimensional array is the array. In this case, we have 3 arrays. When you look at the third line of my output, that is our first array. So that's the one with untitled document. The second array is untitled spreadsheet, and the third array is howdy. So when we're using array square bracket I is an iterable variable, which means that each time the for loop runs, it will be incrementing by +1. Because we have not established the value of I, for loops default to a 0 index. That means that the starting value is 0. So the first time that the for loop runs, the value of I is equal to 0. Additionally, arrays and two-dimensional arrays also have 0 indexes. So that makes them an optimal match for this type of logic system. So when our first array within our two-dimensional array, in this case, the line with untitled document runs, that is array 0 because it is the first array in our two-dimensional array. So that square bracket I is going to iterate through each element or each array of our two-dimensional array, and it will go 0, and then once the iteration completes, it will go to 1, and then it will go to 2, and then it ends. So when we say array square bracket I, we have a variable that is dynamically changing so that we can loop through each array in our two-dimensional array. The second square bracket with the number 2 is the second dimension of the two-dimensional array. So the first dimension identifies which array you want to access. The second dimension references what element you want to access from the one-dimensional array. So when we're in the first array, which means that it is array 0, and we enter in 2, that means we're referencing the third element because arrays are 0 indexed. Thus, in the untitled document example, untitled document, the element is represented by 0. The ID, the second element, is represented by 1, and the file type is the third element. It is represented by a 2. So when we're saying if array square bracket I square bracket 2 dot includes, we are setting ourselves up to have the opportunity to define a file type. So in this case, I'm going to say if it includes single quotes document, I'm going to hit the right arrow twice, I'm going to hit space, and I'm going to add curly brackets, I'm going to hit enter once. So if the array's third element includes the word document, then something is going to happen. And in this case, we are going to be deleting the file. So we're going to use 2 slashes for a comment, and we're going to say delete the files that meet the condition. We're going to hit enter and tab. We're going to use DriveApp dot get file by ID, and we're going to use an open parentheses. Now we're going to do the same thing that we just did, but instead of using the second element of our array, we're going to use the first element, or it's really the second element, but the first, you get it, it's 0 indexed. So we're going to do array square bracket I, we're going to hit the right arrow, we're going to have square brackets, and then we're going to enter in 1. So I'm going to open up my execution log because I fumbled it a little bit there. First element of our array is the name. The second element is the ID. So when we enter in 1, the name is 0, the ID is 1. So now we have the file ID. So when we're using DriveApp.getFile by ID, we can now go to the right of getFile by ID and use .set capital T trashed, and we're going to open up our parentheses. Set trashed is a Boolean value, which means it is either true or false. So if you set it to true, it's going to move the file using its ID to the trash can. If you access a file by its ID and you set it to false and it's already in the trash can, then it will move it back into your drive. But for our purposes, we want to delete this file. So we're going to set that to true. We're going to hit the right arrow on our keyboard, add a semicolon, hit enter once, add 2 slashes for a comment, and now we're going to have a log statement to announce the deleted file. We're going to hit enter and tab. This is optional, but I just think that adding things to your console log and creating transparency is really helpful, especially when you're doing stuff like deleting files. You want to have some type of feedback that something happened. So that's what this is going to aspire to do. This is completely optional, but I do recommend it. So we're going to do logger.log, open parentheses, single quotes, the following file was deleted. We're going to add a semicolon, we're going to add a colon, then hit space, hit the right arrow on the keyboard, hit space, add the plus symbol, space, and then we're going to say array, square bracket I, hit the right arrow, square bracket 0, that's going to return the name. Hit the right arrow on your keyboard twice, add a semicolon, and then once you're ready to hit run, you will be deleting the file you'll be deleting all files that meet the condition that you have entered into your for loop. We're going to hit run. You can see we get our file iterator, we get our arrays, we get our 2-dimensional arrays, and now I have some logging that says the following file was deleted, untitled document. So that's a really good sign because we had 2 spreadsheets and a document, and now we are getting some feedback that the untitled document was deleted. So I'm going to go back to my folder. I'm going to hit refresh. And now you can see that it is only 2 spreadsheets in here and that the untitled document has been removed. So we're going to go back to our project and we're going to try and run this again just to see what happens. And you can see when we run it, it successfully compiles, but nothing has been deleted because we only have spreadsheets. We don't have any documents in our folder. And thus our program has done exactly what it set out to do.
I hope you found this video helpful. If you'd like to continue following along with this series, please check out the playlist linked in the description.